Sales is the most lucrative skill in the world, period. The problem is most sales advice out there today is outdated, cheesy, and could even keep you from the deals that can make all the difference in your career. This is the No BS Sales School, a podcast for entrepreneurs and salespeople who want to master the skill of selling without all the BS. Man, did I just dork up a sales call. I was so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed. And I went home for lunch and I ran into Sally, my dear wife, and I told her what happened. She goes, "This would be a great story for a podcast. You ought to record this and kind of share your pain because maybe somebody else can learn and maybe you'll learn a damn lesson." So I said, you know what? You're right. Let's do that. So today, well, let's start off about a week ago. A week ago, a really good friend of mine, guy we've done business together a lot, he said, "Walker, I have got a great situation for you. There's a guy who's one of my best friends who is in charge of a sales team at a company about 100 people. And they have a sales kickoff in January and they need a speaker." And I told him, "You should be the guy." I'm like, "Holy shit, that's great." So we figured out a budget, nice budget. It's good, you know. And he said, so I told him and he said, "What about this?" And I said, "Well, what about that?" And we figured out a great, what I thought was going to be a great topic. My buddy was the guy who's overseeing this whole sales kickoff, right? He's the one, he's in charge of the whole event. And he said, "All right, I'm going to call the head of the company and tell him I recommend you and we'll see how it goes." I was like, great. So the next message I get is from my buddy and he says, "Dude, you're in." I said, "I'm in." He said, "Yeah." He goes, "He wants to talk to you, but he's already put you on the agenda. This is great. You're in." I was psyched. I like these speaking gigs. I mean, they're great. I do them all the time, January, February, especially. Got a lot of things going on. Nice cash flow for me. Nice to get in front of more people. I love doing it. This was out of town. So today I was supposed to meet with the guy, the final decision maker, whom already put me on the calendar. It's already there. And so he asked to move up the time to this morning. And so I was like, hell yeah, that's a good sign. Not a buying signal, because everybody knows from this podcast, there are no freaking buying signals except for a check, right? But he was anxious, ready to go. So he gets on the phone this morning. And we talked and I said, "Tell me how much time you have." And he told me about 45 minutes. I said, "That's great." I said, "What were you hoping we could talk about?" So far, so good, right? Walker, way to go. How much time do you have? What do you want to talk about? He said, "Well, I'm looking for a speaker who can do consultative sales, and I want to know about your process." I was like, okay, sounds good. And so I launched, blah, 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 blah. Here's my process. Here's what I do. Here's what I've done for other people, blah, 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 blah. And he asked me a couple of other questions. Tell me how you might handle this situation. Tell me you might handle that situation. Blah, and I just jump right into answer. You won't believe what happened at the end. Now, lucky for me, right? What I did say was what I always tell people about workshops. Hey man, I'm happy to do a workshop for you and I'll charge you a lot of money. And what I'll tell you is your people will say that was great because people tell me I'm very entertaining. But really, in a workshop thing where you just have a one-off, nothing's going to change. You're going to pay me a lot of money. The people will say it's great, but nothing's going to change. It won't fix anything you're dealing with. He said, that's interesting. Thank you for being straight with me. I said, yeah, absolutely. And then I went on to say some other bullshit, blah, 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 blah. And pretty soon the 45 minutes was up. And I was ready to finish this thing up. And he goes, "Well, here's the thing. One of the things you told me did resonate. I did appreciate that. That was good. But, we got another guy who's going to be speaking in that same day. And he's very similar to you. I mean, I think what you've got is already we've already got this covered by somebody else. So, maybe we'll call you later about the longer term training. But I think for this thing, we're good." And I was like, that's great. I think that's a wise decision. Clearly don't want to duplicate what you were doing before. So that's awesome. And I hung up the phone and went, son of a bitch. I did it. I did what I tell my sales teams never to do. Never. Don't fall for a positive prospect. Don't fall for one that is, hey, we're ready to go. We've got the money. We're ready to hire you. I've been waiting to call you. How much is it? Or let's go. You know why? Because a positive prospect is the absolute hardest prospect to close. And it's got nothing to do with the prospect. You know, it's got everything to do with me and any other salesperson that has a positive prospect that there's no way they could screw up. And so they skip the system. They skip the process they're supposed to follow. You know, the process where we figure out what somebody's actually looking for. What's their pain that we need to solve? What is it that would be a perfect outcome? In this situation, suppose I'd ask, man, I'm happy to talk to you. Brian said nice things to me about you. You said he said nice things about me. I wouldn't believe a damn thing Brian said about me if I were you. And then I'd said, here's what I know. Typically, you've got something in mind that you'd want to hear me talk about. What would that be? And he might have answered, because I kind of went there. And he said, I want to learn more about, you need to do consultative sales. And instead of going, really? Well, that's what I do, blah, 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 blah. I should have said, why consultative sales? Give me an example where you think that's not happening. I mean, how often does that happen? What have you tried to do to fix it? Did that work? What do you suppose it's cost you that your guys aren't doing consultative sales consistently? Couldn't be that much. Well, here's the thing. Is that big of a deal? What happens if you don't fix that? What do you think you should do? And then, right, after I've learned those things, after I've learned what we just talked about was the pain test, after we've gone through a discovery process where my prospect doesn't just share a problem like we need a speaker, but I'm finding out what the hell they want the speaker to talk about and what I need to do to differentiate myself from everybody else who might be speaking. And I might say, look, I'm happy to come do a workshop, but here's what I'm going to tell you. I'll come do that, but nothing's going to change. This could be part of a larger process. What a lot of my clients do is we'll start off with some kind of sales kickoff like this, and that leads us into a much longer term program. And typically what happens is we'll get agreement to do this. And at the end of this thing, if you're not blown away by the content, we can say yes or no to moving forward. If you don't want to do longer term training, suits me fine, because I may get there and realize that maybe your audience, your guys are not the right team for me to be working with too. Are you okay if we do it that way? And you know what? I could have gotten that. I probably would have gotten hired. I could have talked about the stuff that he wanted me to talk about instead of the same damn thing that he says somebody else is talking about. Makes me so mad. Not only does it cost me the fee that I would have gotten paid to speak, which was nice, but it probably also blew me out of a contract for a year or 2 years, which could be 100 salespeople, could be a whole lot of money. So learn the lesson that I screwed up again. When you have a positive prospect, one you couldn't possibly screw up, you're going to screw it up unless you go back and you follow your process where you establish up front the rules of the game. And then you work to figure out what's the problem they're trying to solve. And then you figure out, is that problem pain? And do they have a budget to fix it? And how much is that? And how do they make a decision, right? And then before you present what you would do to fix it is make sure they're ready to tell you yes or no. Go through a closing process, and then you can show them what you can do. And after that, if they've said yes or no, great. If they say yes, get paid, and then say, let's make sure that I don't blow this thing at the end, and make sure we lock the sale down. Learn from your sales trainer, your sales coach, who's been doing this for 20 years and knows what good looks like and knows what a screw-up looks like. Well, this today was what a screw-up looks like, and it cost me dearly, and I've learned my damn lesson. I'm not going to do this again. You want help with sales to be better than the crap I just did today on my own? Send me an email, walker@walkermckay.com. Remember, do not participate in National Screw-Off Month. It's happening between now and the first week in January. Stay working, keep your foot on the pedal. Let's go. Thanks for listening to the No BS Sales School podcast. If you're struggling to close deals, then I want to invite you to take my free mini course, where you'll learn the 7 most expensive sales mistakes that will cost you time, money, and credibility. So be sure to click the link in the show notes or go to www.7salesmistakes.com. That's the number 7salesmistakes.com. Thanks again for listening to the No BS Sales School podcast.